Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Here are 4 words in Hindi, all beginning with the character A. What are these 4? Ashobhaniya, in English ugly, anuchit, in English improper, akaran, in English without justification, and anavashyak, in English unnecessary. Who spoke these words? Now, normally, today's generations would think that it is Narendra Modi who likes these acronyms and who likes these rhyming words. But Narendra Modi has been brought up in the BJP, Jansangh, RSS culture. So, for many of them, their guru in oratory is Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So, Atal Bihari Vajpayee used these 4 expressions. What is it that he used these 4 expressions for? And Vajpayee, as we know, was very soft spoken. This was about something that happened exactly 51 years ago this day, which was bank nationalization. When I say this day, 19th July, when I am recording this episode of Cut the Clutter. So, some of you might remember that early on in Cut the Clutter, we did talk about bank nationalization again in episode 217, and I am sharing a link with you today. You can see that because we talk about the economics of bank nationalization and the impact in much greater detail. I will talk about that briefly now because I know that you people keep asking me to talk about political history. Let me talk about some political history through something that happened 51 years ago. 217, as you can guess, was exactly a year ago, episode 217. So that was on the 50th anniversary. So once again, 50th and 51st, this is our favorite subject, and we start with Atal Bihari Vajpayee's 4-word description for what happened. Ashobhaniya, anuchit, akaran, anavashyak. While Vajpayee showed his anger, also because of the way this was done, this was an ordinance brought in on a Saturday. 19th July in 1969 was a Saturday. This ordinance was brought in almost by stealth. In fact, when you look at demonetization as having been done by stealth so quickly without many clearances, where nobody even seemed to know within the government also, this was the first example of something like that happening with India's economy. 1969, bank nationalization. In fact, I could also say today that both steps have proven about equally disastrous. Bank nationalization was supposed to do many wonderful things for India's poor. You might say that it increased branches in rural India to begin with, but beyond that, it did nothing. In fact, as far as social control of the banks was concerned, and fixing special category quotas, etc., was concerned, that Morarji Desai had started earlier in the same year as Indira Gandhi's finance minister, because he had put banks under social control. Having said that, a more sound intellectual argument against bank nationalization was made by Minu Masani, which is not surprising. Minu Masani was the leader of the Swatantra Party, India's last genuine party of a right-wing view on the economy. Also a party that was libertarian in many ways, and Minu Masani was a pakka libertarian and a wonderful intellectual. In fact, he's no more, but his son Zarir is a fine writer also, occasionally writes for us also. So Minu Masani said, he predicted that this will have 3 consequences, and listen to his words. These are all, I picked these up from parliament debates. He said, 1, that this will result in bureaucratic red tapeism. Hua ke nahi hua? Did it happen or not? Number 2, this will lead to graft and corruption. Hua ke nahi hua? Graft and corruption and political interference, he said. Hua ke nahi hua? Did it happen? Did it not happen? Number 3, he said, this will create a chronic loss-making business. Hua ke nahi hua? Because now see what's happened to government's wealth and what's happened to our wealth as citizens and taxpayers. Even under Narendra Modi, you would have thought that he will reverse this big mistake made by Mrs. Gandhi 51 years ago, but he hasn't yet done it, because the problem in India is, all democracies, but India in particular, that bad ideas once implemented are very durable. It's almost impossible. It needs somebody, a lot of doing, a lot of courage or a set of circumstances to reverse them. Think about the retrospective act amendment that Pranab Mukherjee carried out. It's now been 8 years. There have been many finance ministers. Nobody has dared to reverse it. So a bad idea, once implemented, stays. And that is true of bank nationalization also. You would have expected that Narendra Modi, with so much power, would have done it. But you know what? Bad ideas usually come from political populism. Political populism is very profitable in the short run. It is risky in the short run. Now, what is profitable in the short run, political populism, is very damaging in the long run. But in politics, who cares about the long run? I want to win this election. How am I bothered whether the next guy wins his election or not? So that short-termism then takes over, and it's a surprise and disappointment that Narendra Modi has not moved more aggressively. He's done a few things. First, he's made big mistakes like trying to recapitalize these banks. And funnily, you can go and check out the data in detail because it changes every day. About 3.5 lakh crores of good money of taxpayers has been given by way of recapitalization to nationalized banks. Whereas if you see the value of the government's investment and the value of these banks, the same banks have lost more than 4 lakh crores in their market cap in the same period. So whatever you put in there has already gone out. If you really wanted to spend this money for the poor, you could have given it directly to the poor. Poor would have benefited. Also, you would have got more value for money, maybe even more votes for money. But once again, a bad decision made stays. Now, efforts were made again by Modi government, the previous one and now, to then at least reduce the size of the problem, diminish the size of the problem. And one of those was bank consolidation. That you can consolidate these banks, 21 banks can become 12. Good idea, a good beginning. But then what is the future? What's the point of having 12 bad banks instead of 21 bad banks? Because it's the same bad banks. And frankly, when you collapse them into one, usually you find that the value of the sum is not the sum of the parts, which means if you add, say, Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank to Bank of Baroda, what comes out is not an addition of all their values. Because people, the markets don't put value to state enterprises. So the lesson is that you have to get rid of them. Because the other method that India's leaders have used, India's political economy has used, of answering this problem of PSU white elephants is to stop funding them further, is to stop subsidizing their losses and giving them more capital, and changing the rules and laws whereby private sector can come into those fields. So you've seen this happen with aviation. Air India is there, still not sold, but it's there. But so many others have come up. So aviation sector in India is not weighed down by Air India. Similarly, telecom, MTNL, BSNL, they are there. But private telecom sector has been allowed to come in. Now that cannot be done with banks. Simply because when MTNL goes wrong, you don't have to worry so much. Or when Air India goes wrong, okay, you can give them a little loan or something, or you can give sovereign guarantees for your loan. But banks are large, and banks need large capital, and the fate of millions and millions of depositors is involved. So banks have to be recapitalized. So banks then become an endless vacuum system for the exchequer. If you think about the banks in general, PSU banks today are about 63% of India's deposits. It changes again on a daily basis, and when you count it, I am taking the last statement made in Parliament and extrapolating it to today's figures with some estimates. About 63% of India's deposits, 58% of India's loans, and 95% of the bad debts in our banking system, 95%. Now you may again say that market cap is not a very good measure. I know it's not a perfect measure, but if you just think about it, then the value of just HDFC Bank, which came up 24 years ago, after economic reform, value of that one bank, that is 6 lakh plus crore, is more than all the nationalized banks put together, including the State Bank of India. In fact, State Bank of India today is 1.68 trillion rupees, 1,68,000 crores. Today, even ICICI Bank and Kotak Bank have much more value than it. In fact, Kotak Bank, which is so new, values 1 lakh crore more than SBI. SBI is a fine bank. It's also run well, but there are limitations to what a government-run entity can command in the market. And as long as Government of India has the State Bank of India, and it had it in 69 also, there was no economic or social justification, definitely not an economic justification to nationalize the rest. Maybe government could have given more capital to State Bank of India and got it to expand. So what Mrs. Gandhi did in 1969 was neither an economic step nor a social step. It was a political step. But she was using it to edge out, humiliate and edge out Morarji Desai, split the party between the left and the right and make her own hard turn. So this became an instrument to her own hard turn, and which had very bad consequences, including India's economy really going down the drain, India's inflation going into 20s, late 20s, in fact, 27%, 26% by 1974-75. Then the emergency, India's tax rates going to 97.5%, imagine, 97.5%, and big nationalization of India's oil companies, insurance companies, some of which is now, fortunately, being undone by the Modi government. Petroleum in particular. So you see BPCL, for example, that's a good example of the bad decisions of that period being undone now. So bank nationalization is one of them. The other thing that bank nationalization has brought to us is scandals. There is a history of scandals in all banks, but particularly in nationalized banks. Because private banks, even when there are scandals, banks are smaller, shareholders move in faster, and you can get rid of the management and you can get rid of the owners and change ownership. Yes Bank is a good example. Yes Bank had big problems, but what's happened? You threw out the management. In fact, the owner is right now in jail under detention as an under trial. You brought in a new management, some fresh equity, and I know the market cap is not a perfect measure, but it is the one tangible thing we have. The market cap of Yes Bank is more than Dena Bank and Vijaya Bank put together. In fact, it's even more than Canara Bank and Central Bank put together. Yes Bank is about 24,000 crores, Canara Bank is 14,800, Central Bank is 9,500. Old banks. Irony of ironies, if Yes Bank is standing today, it is because one PSU bank, State Bank of India, put in equity and made it survive. It's possible in the course of time that State Bank will make a lot of money on that investment, because a private brand franchise in banking or in any business will always be valued enormously more than a PSU or a government franchise. So once again, on the 51st anniversary of Indira Gandhi's biggest economic blunder, reminder again that Narendra Modi, more likely, if you ask him, who do you swear by, Indira Gandhi or Atal Bihari Vajpayee? No prizes for guessing. He will say Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So if that is the case, then remember Atal Bihari Vajpayee's words, what he called Ashobhaniya, Anuchit, Akaran, Anavashyak, that is ugly, improper, without justification, and unnecessary. He should begin the process of reversing it. It cannot be done overnight, but should be done. Now, political history, since you keep asking me, so I will also do some storytelling. We talk about banking scandals. So now we know Nirav Modi, we know Rana Kapoor, etc., etc. But in our memory, the first real banking scandal in the 60s, 50s, lots of private banks rolled over and died. And that was a problem. So that needed more regulation, etc., etc. Hundreds of banks died in 50s, 60s. So there were those scandals. But really the big political scandal, the first one in India, was in 1971. May 24, 1971. It was called the Jimmy Nagarwala 60 lakh scandal. What had happened was that a man called Jimmy Nagarwala collected 60 lakh rupees in a suitcase from Ved Prakash Malhotra, chief cashier of the State Bank branch, the big State Bank branch in Parliament Street, which does a lot of government business. And he disappeared with it. And suddenly a story came out that this was unauthorized. Ved Prakash Malhotra said that he had got a call from the Prime Minister's office purportedly from P.N. Haksar, who was then secretary to the Prime Minister, who said that 60 lakh rupees were needed immediately and they should put them in a suitcase and somebody will come and collect that, and a code was given to him. And this was, he was told, was needed for secret operations in Bangladesh. May 24, 1971, take your mind back. That is exactly 2 months after Pakistani armies cracked down in what was then East Pakistan. And that is when Mukti Bahini was coming up and lots of secret operations were being carried out. Now, after that, because he wanted to be sure, with Prakash Malhotra, he got a call from a lady who said she was Indira Gandhi. In fact, quote unquote, P.N. Haksar said, I'm putting you on to the Prime Minister. So Indira Gandhi said to him that, look, this is a top secret mission. Somebody will come and take 60 lakhs from you. You ask him, who's he? He'll say, Main Bangladesh ka babu. Huh? And then you say, bar at law. So the code from the guy who will collect was Bangladesh ka babu, and you will say, bar at law. When that happens, that means he's the right guy. You hand over the suitcase to him. And that is exactly what happened, because he told his deputy cashier, one Ravel Singh, to put all this money. 60 lakhs was a lot of money in 1971. He put all this money in that suitcase, went out. Then another person came in a taxi. That was Mr. Jimmy Nagarwala. And he collected his bag from him after exchanging the same code words. And as that happened, by that time, in about half an hour, there was some alarm in the bank because his deputy said, I've released this money, but I don't have a voucher. Mr. Malhotra had told him that I will get you the voucher soon. And Malhotra had been told that after giving the money, you can come to the Prime Minister's office and get the voucher. So Mr. Malhotra went to Prime Minister's office to get the voucher, but they said, we have given no such instructions. What he didn't realize by then was that Ravel Singh had got panicky, that 60 lakhs had gone out of his accounts without a voucher. And he found Malhotra missing. So in panic, he reported it to the police. When that happened, it got to the press. It became a big story in the city, a national scandal. The Jan Sangh, Indira Gandhi's critics, they were very strong critics at that time. They all got active. The press got active. And then by that time, it was too late for government to do any backtracking on this story. So Delhi police then immediately launched an operation called Operation Tufan. The same evening at 9:30, Nagarwala was arrested. Very quickly, he was tried. In fact, it was one of the most dramatic and fastest and farcical trials in India's legal history. He was tried and convicted in 10 minutes by a magistrate with no arguments, just based on his confession. The trial was over in 10 minutes. He was given 4-year rigorous imprisonment. But after being imprisoned in Tihar, he made an appeal and he said this trial was wrong and farcical. There should be a fresh trial under a different judge. Now, Sessions Court granted him permission for a fresh trial, but did not accept his request for a separate new judge. He again went into appeal, and while that was going on, once again, one of those things that happened, D.K. Kashyap, the young police officer who had investigated the case, mysteriously died. In October, his retrial was to be held. Then, exactly at that time, before the trial could begin, D.K. Kashyap died mysteriously in a road accident while he was going on his honeymoon. Nothing was ever found in that case. So, once again, that thing went into what Hindi media would call Thande Baste Mein. When that happened, November 16, again, Nagarwala wrote to a man called D.F. Karaka. D.F. Karaka used to run a publication called Current in Bombay. Current and Blitz in Bombay those days were the two rival publications run by two doughty Parsis. One by Karaka, one by Rusi Karanjia. In fact, if you've seen Anurag Kashyap's film Bombay Velvet, you see that rivalry play out there also between two media barons. He reached out to Karaka. Karaka wasn't well, couldn't come and see him. He refused to see his reporter. He said he had a big story to tell and a big scoop to give. Then he wrote a letter also to his lawyer, Mr. Maheshwari. And in that letter he said that, look, bring me a good journalist. I want to tell them a very important story. It will be the scoop of the century. So R.K. Maheshwari, the lawyer, he had that letter, but something happened before that he could act on that letter. Why? Because early February 1972, see how quickly time is moving. May 24, 1971 is the first report. Is when the event happened. Bangladesh war happened. This is early February 1972. By this time, Mrs. Gandhi is Ma Durga because she's created Bangladesh, broken up Pakistan, India is celebrating. Early Feb, he falls sick. And he gets so sick that he's taken to hospital in Tihar jail. Soon enough, he gets so sick that 21st of February, he gets shifted to Delhi's Gobind Ballabh Pant Super Speciality Hospital. He shifted there, and once again this lawyer is searching around to see whether he can have a story out someplace. And then mysteriously, I mean, you can call it mysteriously, you can call it coincidentally, or you can say that in these stories there cannot be any coincidences. Nothing happens without a reason. बिना कारण कोई बात नहीं होती. कुछ तो बात थी. March 2, that is within less than 10 days of going to GB Pant. Remember, February is a short month. He died. And they said something happened to his heart and he died. He was 51. In fact, March 2, 1972 was Jimmy Nagarwala's 51st birthday, on which day he walked out. Now, where do you find the best archival material on this? I'm sure you can search and write a book about this, and I'm sure lots of people have written a lot. But I will suggest a story in India today that was done in 1977. No, I did not write it. I'm sharing it a link with you. I did not write it. It was in fact published there long before I joined in 1983. And that story gives a lot of detail. And that story also speculates with some evidence on what could have led this to happen. And that story says that, look, in May of 1971, a big, great rebel leader, a doughty rebel leader called Tiger Siddiqui, he escaped from East Pakistan with 10,000 fighters. And he needed money. So it's logical that RAW at that time, very active under RN Kao, wanted to transfer that money. The second thing they tell us is that Jimmy Nagarwala was not a nobody. Jimmy Nagarwala looked like a nondescript person, and the only pictures we've seen of him are pictures of him in sort of a jail uniform. But he had worked with army intelligence in British times, and somehow he had stayed connected with the intelligence agencies. So it's possible that, it's likely in fact, that he had now been co-opted to work between RAW and military intelligence, RAW, military intelligence and BSF, because together they were carrying out the Mukti Bahini operation. So this money was meant for Mukti Bahini. Again, circumstantial evidence that why would Malhotra give this much money to somebody on somebody's phone call? And it seems that he knew Mrs. Gandhi quite well. He recognized her voice because, in fact, when he gets that call from her, his response to her is, "As per your wishes, Mataji." Now, Mrs. Gandhi was just about 50 at that time, but "As per your wishes, Mataji," or "Jaisa aap kahein, Mataji." Now, head cashier of State Bank of India will not call the Prime Minister Mataji just like that unless he had a sense of familiarity. And one evidence there, one little smoking gun with a little bit of smoke in it, is the fact that being the head cashier, just the head cashier of State Bank of India branch in Parliament Street, he was also a member of Mrs. Gandhi's Committee on Prime Minister's Relief Fund. So he was being used to transfer funds or take out funds, etc., etc. Nevertheless, the story died with this. It looks like almost everybody disappeared. Nagarwala, as it later turned out, used to carry a walkie-talkie. Nagarwala also, in the way he took this money and carried it, left clues all through. He told the taxi driver what he was doing. It was as if it was part of his drill, so that he will do nothing dishonest. Now, it's possible, and the India Today story makes a presumption that this was a secret operation, that this money was actually meant for Tiger Siddiqui. It was sent, but because the deputy cashier panicked, the story came out and then became too much of a scandal for government to put down. So basically, as it happens in intelligence business, the intelligence proliferations decided to sacrifice Jimmy Nagarwala. They may have told him, "Abhi tum convict ho jao, thode din mein chhudwa denge." But when that didn't happen, he got impatient. He started filing appeals. Then further consequences happened, particularly when he started saying he will tell the whole story. And again, the interesting thing is that he, from the jail, he asked to speak with two people. One, he said, "Let me speak with the Prime Minister. She knows the facts in my story." And second, he said, "Let me speak with Mr. K.F. Rustamji." K.F. Rustamji is a formidable Indian police officer. He was then the Director General of Border Security Force, BSF. BSF, as we told you, had a stellar and a key and a central role in running the Mukti Bahini operation. So that wish obviously wasn't granted, and many mysteries then got buried with him. The case against him was that he called Malhotra and he pretended to be Haksar and he pretended to be Indira Gandhi. Now that's unlikely that Malhotra will be fooled like that, because Malhotra had been dealing with both Haksar and Indira Gandhi. He also used to be going into Prime Minister's office and house often. That's how he got in there again to get his voucher. So he was not somebody who was unfamiliar with that area. Also, Jimmy Nagarwala already had facial paralysis on one side and had a speech impediment. So how could he do this mimicking act? This story did not add up. It also turned out later that he had done some work in Japan. He had taught English in Japan for some time. Remember, we told you he had worked with British intelligence, British Army intelligence in those times. So once again, we don't exactly know what happened. This is a mystery that stays there forever. In my memory, this was also the first big banking scandal in India which took political overdose.